This is the South African Morning. Good to have you back with us right here on DSTV channel 403. Time for that reminder of our viewer question this morning. We'll get an update on COVID-19 from the Health Minister at around 8 o'clock this morning. And after 2 years of restrictions and changing the way that we do things on a day-to-day basis, we ask you this. Do you think it's time to stop wearing masks? Are you mask fatigued? Could you do without a mask at this point? Or do you think we should still keep wearing our masks? We're keen to hear from you. Simply head over to enca.com, vote either yes or no, and have your say on social media. We absolutely enjoy hearing from you, so tag us at ENCA on Twitter, but also find us on Facebook. We are ENCA News. Pop us a comment and we'll be sure to review those comments and share them with you a bit later. But on Wednesday, 193 UN member states voted against Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and among them was Switzerland, which has always remained neutral. But 35 countries, including South Africa, abstained from that vote. And Pretoria says the wording of the UN resolution does not lend itself a peaceful solution. But the stance could be seen as pandering to Putin. So let's get some insight on this now with international relations expert John Stremlau. John, good to have you, and good morning. Thank you so much for your time. I want to start with Switzerland and their turning point. Where do you think it came about? Because for the longest time, they had been neutral as a country.
Well, all of Europe seems to be mobilized over this crisis. And I must say, I'm sure you've been covering it, but that the nuclear fire last night that the Russians ignited in Zaporizhzhia is really the most alarming development and makes credible his threat that he apparently conveyed in the conversation with President Macron of France yesterday, that he would stop at nothing to save the Ukrainian nation from itself, or some sort of thing like that, because it is really it's twice the size of Chernobyl, which as you know, imploded in 1986, and it could send nuclear clouds all over Europe. It could create an enormous crisis for the Ukrainian people. And apparently the security cameras that have been verified by the New York Times confirm all of this, that the Russian military is attacking on all sides of this nuclear power plant, which is 6,000 megawatts down in southern Ukraine. Right. And it does make credible Putin's threat to use nuclear by a creative but a potentially disastrous way. What this will mean for the negotiations, for the United Nations, which is now being called into emergency session, apparently by several members have called for this, I don't really know, but I don't think Putin's listening to anyone other than his own imperatives to win at all costs in Ukraine.
Yeah, and just to echo your sentiments there, I mean, the president, that's Ignacio Casas, quoted here saying that we're in an extraordinary situation where extraordinary measures could be decided. I suppose that turning point coming through for him. Should we expect the same for South Africa, given that they're still taking more of a neutral stance?
Well, South Africa can keep its own counsel on this. I'm very uncomfortable with anything other than a vote for condemning Russia, because this is myself personally speaking, because the attack on the nation of Ukraine and the suffering that the people of Ukraine are going through. There's going to be estimated 10 million refugees, the UN estimates, and you can see people hovering down in their subways in the major cities, and we now have in real time actual credible visuals of what is going on. There's never been a war like this. This is like an 18th century or 17th century colonial or imperial conquest, but there has never been this kind of instant communication. So we all have a vision of what the Ukrainian people are going through, and it is.
I think I've just lost you there for a moment, John, but I wanted to, it was bringing me to this next question, which I wanted to just ask you around the sanctions so far on Russia. You mentioned earlier on that it seems Vladimir Putin is not listening to anyone besides his own close advisors. But in terms of where we stand with those sanctions, how do they look against Russia? What is working against Russia right now?
Well, nothing seems to be working against Vladimir Putin, but the Russian people are also suffering now because of the sanctions. The sanctions are unprecedented. And I was really, really surprised. Europe has changed in a week from 30 years of gabbing. And so it is really intense.
Also, South Africa, I mean, we mentioned earlier on that, the Deputy Minister of Durko had mentioned to the National Assembly that they don't want to pick sides here. It's a question I also posed to Father Michael Lapsley before our conversation. Is it a matter of choosing sides? Is it more than about sides for, South Africa, and I suppose for those condemning even South Africa, not taking a definite stance given the history of this country?
Given the history of this country, it is not consistent with its core principles, its core democratic principles. It should be identifying with the aspirations of the democratic people of Ukraine. That in my view, is for sure. But I can't second guess what they might be thinking in Durko or in the presidency. But I do think that the time for negotiations is not yet ripe. And last night's nuclear fire illustrates how Putin does not have a plan B. He's pressing on with the threat of using nuclear in a, quote, creative way, but in a potentially disastrous way. And he thinks maybe he can get his concessions from the international community and, of course, get the surrendering of the Ukrainian people so he can put his own puppet in and save Ukraine from itself. God only knows what he plans to do with the wreck that his army has created in Ukraine.
All right, we'll leave it there. I appreciate you speaking to us about this. International relations expert, Professor John Stremlau, thank you for your time.